This question is: we suspect that one of our salaried employees is working another full time job while also working for us. There are little clues that make me suspicious, like they are never on camera, they can't take meetings on short notice, and their LinkedIn shows that they are the CEO of their own company. How do I tackle this? All right, Summer, I have some thoughts on this. I think this is a pretty interesting one. And quite honestly, I think this exists in every organization. Some organizations have people that conceal it better than others. But what do you think?
Well, first, I was hoping that you would pause after saying, "How do I tackle this?" So, but I do think that this is something that a lot of companies are thinking about, or maybe they've had suspicion about. And part of it is that we have more remote workers now, more than ever. And I also think that there are going to be folks who see it as an opportunity to potentially increase their income and may do it. I mean, I think it's not. I wouldn't say I would be surprised if we begin to see more of this. But if I'm a people leader and I suspect that one of my team members was working a full time job, I think there are a couple of steps that one could go through to try to navigate and get answers to those questions one way or another, because certainly not knowing is the worst possible outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and why is it the worst possible outcome? I think we're gonna have so much fun on this one. Why is it the worst possible outcome to not know about this kind of arrangement
Mhm.
your employees have?
Well, I think there's a few, but the number one that comes to mind is that if a manager suspects that their team member isn't fully focused or making a contribution, I think by default, they are going to treat them a little bit differently. And so I think it's important to find out whether they are or aren't, and then you can address the facts at hand. And if left unaddressed, then I think the potential for the company losing productivity, uh, potentially the quality of the work that's going out. I mean, nobody's going to truly win in those situations, especially if the employee is working two jobs and they get caught.
Summer, working two jobs at the same time. All right, so here's how I feel. First of all, the company should have policies about what they will allow and what they won't, right? So, if you have a moonlighting policy, if you have a no other employment policy, kind of like a sole employer kind of deal,
Mhm,
you need to have that
mhm,
because it is so easy in this remote work environment for people to hold multiple roles. And quite honestly, it's easy to do it if they're showing up in your office because they can always have a virtual assistant, someone they're delegating to, step out for calls, whatever the case may be. I just think that it's really really bad for an organization to not have their policies defined
mhm,
and subject yourself to your brand being like tarnished or productivity being tarnished because the higher up a person is in an organization, there's likely a ripple effect of
mhm,
their distraction. Um, and even it doesn't have to be someone high up, but if there's someone who uh, is working with a customer, right? If they're
mhm.
distracted, then the customer's not getting what they need. So you gotta pay attention to this stuff. I think it's incredibly important. I think it's so important because it's just gonna happen so much more. I think.
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah, speaking of the policy, Joey, I think that's one of the key pieces in order to manage that. And it's not uncommon, especially now that individuals have a side hustle or they have a second job, uh, to address the question that came in on this topic specifically. Somebody showing CEO of their own company on LinkedIn, like that in itself to me is not necessarily like a huge red flag, because that could be their side hustle, that could be their hobby that generates income, but we don't know until we really look into that. And that in itself isn't uncommon either. So I think the key piece of this is it's not uncommon for folks to have side hustles or second jobs or maybe even own a business. But what's important is that for uh, the period of time that they are working for your organization, whether you define that as a work day or you measure their performance on outcomes, that they are meeting the expectations. At the end of the day, if they're not meeting expectations, then, and there is suspicion, then yes, we have to have these conversations